You just slapped the wrong woman." The diner went still. Forks froze mid-air. A neon light buzzed above like a warning. The white waitress's hand trembled as the sound of that slap echoed longer than it should have. Across the counter, the black woman she'd just struck didn't move. She simply straightened, her eyes steady, her voice low enough to make everyone lean in. "You're going to regret that." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. It started 10 minutes earlier on a slow Tuesday afternoon in a family diner off Route 17. Coffee mugs clinked, a radio hummed something from the 90 seconds, and the smell of grease floated through the air. The woman Naomi Brooks, mid-30 seconds, calm posture, no jewelry, just a simple tan blazer, walked in and took a corner booth. She asked for water. The waitress, a young blonde named Kayla, glanced at her, then at her outfit, then muttered, "We don't serve job interviews here, sweetheart." Naomi didn't respond. She was used to that tone, the kind soaked in sugar but sharpened with steel. She just smiled and said, "I'm here for lunch." Kayla rolled her eyes and handed her a sticky menu like it might bite. Across the room, two truckers chuckled under their breath. One whispered, "Another one of them trying to act classy." The other nodded, "Probably can't pay for pie." The manager, a heavy-set man with a badge that read Rick, leaned against the counter watching it all with detached amusement. Naomi ordered a turkey sandwich, calm as Sunday morning. Kayla took her time, bringing it 15 minutes, then 20. When it finally landed on the table, the plate was sloppy, half the fries spilled into the napkin. "You forgot the mustard," Naomi said softly. "You can get it yourself," Kayla snapped. Phones lifted, curious. Naomi didn't move. She just said, "You have no idea what I own." And that's when Kayla did it, one sharp, reckless motion, a slap. Not hard enough to knock her down, but enough to draw every ounce of air from the room. The sound cracked against the chrome and glass like a verdict. Rick barked, "Kayla," but didn't step forward. No one did. Naomi touched her cheek once, slow, then looked Kayla dead in the eye. "You just made a mistake that'll cost you your job, your reputation, and maybe a little more," Kayla scoffed. "You think you can scare me? You're nobody." Naomi's lips curved into something colder than anger. "Sweetheart, I'm the wife of the man who signs your boss's paycheck." Rick blinked, uncertain. Kayla laughed nervously. "Yeah, right. My boss owns this diner." "No," Naomi said. "He leases it from my husband." The words didn't need to be shouted, they landed like thunder anyway. Phones came out. One of the truckers whispered, "Oh, hell." Kayla's smile broke. Rick paled. Naomi stood, calm, unshaken. "Finish your shift if you can," she said softly, "because the next time you clock in, this place might have new management." She reached for her phone and dialed. "Babe," she said when the line picked up. It happened again. The voice on the other end, deep, quiet, dangerous, replied, "Send me the address." Naomi glanced up at Kayla one last time. "Enjoy your last order." Outside, a black SUV was already turning onto Route 17. The moment Naomi stepped outside, the wind carried the sound of tires rolling over gravel. The black SUV stopped by the curb, its engine still running. Two men in dark suits got out first, silent, watchful, the kind of presence that made the world around them slow down. The driver opened the rear door, and out stepped a man whose calm could freeze a room. His name was Vincent Brooks, Naomi's husband, the same man local news once called the quiet storm of the East Coast. He was not tall in a cinematic way, but the kind of tall that filled space with control. His voice was calm, low, deliberate. "Which one?" he asked. Naomi simply nodded toward the diner's glass doors. Vincent looked through them and saw Kayla standing frozen behind the counter, the same hand that had struck his wife now gripping a coffee pot she would never use again. "Stay in the car," he said quietly. "No," Naomi replied. "She needs to hear it from me." Inside, every patron was pretending not to look but could not help watching. Kayla's laugh had vanished, replaced by a trembling silence that even the humming refrigerator could not fill. Rick, the manager, wiped his forehead and whispered, "We do not want trouble." Naomi stepped back into the diner, her shoes tapping against the linoleum like a slow countdown. Vincent followed her inside, not as a man entering a restaurant, but as someone entering a courtroom. He did not need to say a word. His presence did the talking. "You called my wife a liar," he said finally, his tone even. You put your hands on her. You embarrassed her in front of strangers. Tell me, miss, what did she do to deserve that? Kayla stuttered. I did not know who she was. Vincent tilted his head slightly. That is the problem, is it not? You treat people based on who you think they are. Naomi placed a hand on the counter. You did not hit me because you were having a bad day. You hit me because you saw someone who did not look like she belonged. A customer in the corner whispered, "She is right." Another lifted a phone, recording quietly. The atmosphere in the diner thickened. The air felt heavy, as if the truth itself demanded oxygen. Vincent turned to Rick. How long has she worked here? Rick swallowed hard. 2 years, sir. Then 2 years too long, Vincent said. You are done, both of you, effective immediately. Rick's jaw dropped. You cannot fire me. You do not work here. Vincent smiled faintly. I own the land under this diner. You pay rent to my company every month. You think I would let my wife walk into a place I do not have leverage over? Kayla gasped. Rick's face went pale. Naomi spoke again, her tone steady but laced with something that cut deeper than anger. I came here because I wanted to believe that decency still existed in places like this. But all I found was arrogance wearing an apron. Kayla began to cry softly, muttering, I am sorry. Naomi looked at her and said, You are not sorry for what you did. You are sorry because you got caught. Vincent leaned closer to Rick. You will post a public apology within 24 hours. You will send a written one to my wife's office. If you fail to do that, this diner will be closed by morning. Rick nodded quickly, fear spreading across his face. Yes, sir. Naomi took one last look around the diner. Every pair of eyes watched her now, not as a stranger but as something else proof. Proof that silence has a breaking point. She reached for Vincent's hand. Let us go, she said quietly. As they walked out, a young waitress from the back, maybe 19, called out, Ma'am, for what it is worth, I saw everything. I wanted to say something, but I froze. I am sorry. Naomi stopped, turned, and said softly, Next time, do not freeze. Speak. That is how things change. The young woman nodded, tears in her eyes. Vincent held the door open for Naomi as they stepped into the cold afternoon. Behind them, the SUV door shut, and silence fell again inside the diner except for the hum of a refrigerator and the sound of one phone still recording. Justice had not shouted that day. It had whispered, and everyone had heard it. By the time the SUV pulled away from the diner, word had already begun to spread. A teenage customer's video had hit 200,000 views in less than an hour. The caption read, Black woman slapped in diner, but she owns the block. Naomi did not look at her phone. She sat quietly beside Vincent, watching the landscape slide by through tinted glass. The hum of the engine filled the silence between them. You did not have to come, she said softly. Vincent replied, When someone touches what is mine, I show up. Naomi turned to him. That is exactly why they fear you. Vincent smiled faintly. Fear keeps them careful, but respect keeps them honest. His tone carried the kind of calm that made people wonder what storms he had survived to sound that way. As the SUV slowed in front of their office building downtown, cameras had already gathered near the entrance. Reporters shouted questions about the Route 17 incident. Naomi stepped out first, her blazer pressed, expression neutral. Vincent followed, flanked by security. A journalist yelled, Mrs. Brooks, did the waitress get fired? Naomi paused just long enough to answer. She was educated. Whether that feels like firing is up to her. The line spread online within minutes. Inside the Brooks Holdings headquarters, an assistant met them at the elevator. Ma'am, the board is requesting a statement. Social media is calling it the diner case. Naomi nodded. Prepare a response. No anger, no hashtags, just truth. The elevator doors closed, sealing them into mirrored quiet. Vincent looked at her reflection and said, You could let it go. Naomi shook her head. If I do, the next woman they humiliate will not have someone to call. Upstairs, the boardroom glowed with afternoon light spilling through glass walls. A dozen executives waited, uncertain whether to look at her or the man beside her. Naomi placed her phone on the table. Before we start, play this, she said. The assistant tapped the screen. The diner footage filled the silence. Every frame showed the slap, the stares, the stillness that followed. No music, no edits, just the truth. When it ended, no one spoke. Naomi folded her hands. That is not a viral clip, she said. That is a mirror, and we are going to use it. One executive, an older white man named Harris, cleared his throat. Ma'am, do you really want to amplify this? It might spark protests, damage the brand. Vincent leaned forward, voice low and measured. Damage comes from silence, not from honesty, Naomi added. People do not hate mistakes. They hate cover-ups. She stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the city that had both ignored and enriched them. We are launching an initiative, she said. Every business we own, restaurants, hotels, clubs, will undergo a bias and conduct audit. Every complaint will be reviewed by an independent team. No more unspoken rules about who looks like they belong. Harris hesitated. That will cost millions. Naomi turned, eyes calm but sharp. So does ignorance. We just do not itemize it. Vincent watched her with quiet pride. He had seen her fight boardrooms before, but this time her conviction carried something deeper than business. It was personal. Her voice softened slightly as she spoke again. I have been that woman in a lobby told to wait, in a restaurant told to pay first, in a meeting asked if I was lost, and every time I stayed silent, someone else paid for it later. The room was still. One young analyst, a Latina woman near the back, whispered, "Thank you." Naomi nodded to her. "You are welcome, but do not thank me yet. Thank me when this changes something." She turned back to the table. "I want a statement drafted by tonight. It will say this: we believe respect should not depend on appearance. We believe in accountability, and we will start with our own. No slogans, no pity. Just resolve." The assistant wrote quickly, her fingers shaking slightly. Vincent rose. "Meeting adjourned," he said. As they walked out, the boardroom filled with a quiet hum of voices. Fear, admiration, uncertainty, all blending into something that sounded a lot like change beginning to move. In the hallway, Naomi exhaled for the first time in hours. "You think people will understand?" she asked. Vincent answered, "They will not all understand, but they will remember." She nodded, stepping into the elevator again. For a brief second, her reflection caught the light calm, strong, unshaken. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere distant, as if the world itself was still reacting to what had happened inside that diner. Justice, she thought, is not about revenge. It is about memory. And this time, the world was not going to forget. That night, the city pulsed with noise and light, but inside the Brooks penthouse, the world felt quiet, almost too quiet. Naomi stood by the window overlooking the skyline of glass towers and headlights that moved like rivers of fire. Her reflection stared back at her, calm, but not still. Vincent entered the room without a sound, carrying 2 glasses of water instead of the usual whiskey. "You did good today," he said. Naomi shook her head slightly. "I did what should have been done years ago." She turned from the window and sat down on the edge of the couch. "Vincent, when that girl slapped me, it was not about her. It was about every person who ever thought they could humiliate someone like me and get away with it." He placed the glasses on the table and said, "That is why you cannot stop now. The board will follow your lead, but the world is watching for you to falter." Naomi nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The world has been watching me my whole life. They just never expected me to keep standing." Vincent smiled softly. "That is why they never see you coming." The air between them carried a quiet strength, something unspoken but heavy with understanding. Then Naomi's phone buzzed. Her assistant's name flashed across the screen. She answered. "Yes, what is it?" The voice on the other end trembled. "Ma'am, the diner manager Rick just held a press conference. He denied everything, said you provoked his staff and that you threatened him." The clip is spreading. Naomi's jaw tightened, but her tone remained composed. "Thank you. Send me the footage." Vincent had already opened his laptop, typing fast. Within seconds, the video appeared on the screen, Rick standing outside the diner, a microphone in his face, pretending to be the victim. "We were just trying to serve her," he said dramatically. "But she became aggressive. She started recording, calling names. I had to protect my staff." Naomi exhaled slowly. "He is rewriting the story." Vincent leaned forward, eyes cold. "He is sealing his fate." Naomi watched the clip again, every frame feeding her determination. "Call Carla," she said firmly. "Tell her I want the legal department on standby by morning. If they want to turn this into a spectacle, we will turn it into a statement." Vincent nodded and made the call. Within minutes, Carla Evans, their chief legal officer, appeared on the screen through a live video call. "Mrs. Brooks," she greeted. "I have seen the clip. We can file a defamation suit, but I believe we should go one step further." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Go on," Carla continued. "We have received multiple complaints from employees of that diner over the last 2 years. Mistreatment, withheld pay, racial comments. If we compile that evidence, we can expose a pattern, not just one incident." Naomi's eyes sharpened. "Then do it. Every record, every witness, every detail. Let the world see the truth behind the curtain. Carla nodded. Understood, ma'am. When the call ended, Vincent looked at Naomi and said, "You are about to make enemies." She replied, "Then they should come prepared." She walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small black notebook filled with handwritten notes. Each page was a story, a memory of bias, a reminder of why she fought. "Every time something like this happens," she said, flipping through the pages, "I write it down. Not because I want revenge, but because I want record. History only changes when someone refuses to forget." Vincent watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You never stop," he said. "I cannot afford to," she answered. "Not when silence still feels safe to them." The clock ticked past midnight. Outside, the city lights flickered against the glass walls, casting streaks of gold across the room. Naomi closed the notebook, her expression firm. "Tomorrow we go public," she said, not with anger, with evidence. Vincent nodded. "They will try to twist it again." Naomi's tone was calm but final. "Then we will not speak louder. We will speak clearer." She turned off the lights, leaving only the city glow painting her silhouette. Somewhere below, traffic murmured like distant applause. Justice was no longer a headline. It was a mission, and Naomi Brooks was just getting started. The next morning broke with a gray sky, the kind that seemed to predict a storm long before it arrived. Naomi walked through the marble lobby of Brooks Holdings with a deliberate calm that made people step aside without being asked. Her assistant, Maya, hurried to keep pace beside her, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, the diner story is trending on every platform. News outlets are calling it the slap that shook Main Street. Half the comments are praising you, the other half are calling it staged." Naomi did not break stride. "Of course they are. People only call truth fake when it hits too close to home." She entered the conference room where her legal and communications teams were already waiting. Screens lit up around the table showing social media feeds, headlines, and live broadcasts. Carla Evans stood at the head of the table, organized and sharp as ever. "Mrs. Brooks," she began, "we traced multiple complaints connected to that diner and 3 others under the same franchise. Same ownership, same management style, same pattern of discrimination. It is systemic." Naomi folded her arms. "Then we do not go after one restaurant? We go after the network." The room went silent for a moment. Carla continued carefully, "If we do that, it will be national news. You will be turning a personal attack into a corporate investigation. There will be backlash." Naomi replied, "Good. Let them push back. Maybe then they will understand what it feels like to be shoved for no reason." Vincent entered the room then, holding a folder. He placed it in front of Naomi. "These are statements from 3 former employees. They all mention Rick by name. He used racial slurs on the job and laughed about calling the cops on black customers who complained." Naomi's eyes darkened, not with rage, but with resolve. "File them," she said. "Every document, every witness, everything verified. If this is bigger than one slap, we are going to prove it." Maya looked uneasy. "Ma'am, do you want to respond publicly?" Naomi nodded slowly. "Yes. Schedule a press conference for noon. No rehearsed lines, no corporate speech, just truth." The team exchanged glances. They had seen her speak before, but this time felt different. At exactly 12 o'clock, Naomi stood behind a glass podium in the media room of Brooks Holdings. The space was packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones labeled with every major network logo. She waited for the room to quiet. When it did, she began. 2 days ago, I walked into a diner to have lunch. I was slapped by a waitress who decided that my presence was a threat to her comfort. That moment went viral, not because it was shocking, but because it was familiar. The room stayed still. She continued, voice clear and steady. "What happened to me was not an isolated incident. It is part of a system that lets people believe they can humiliate others based on how they look. But I am not here to talk about humiliation. I am here to talk about accountability." She gestured toward the screen behind her. Images of documents, complaints, and timestamps appeared one by one. "We have evidence of repeated discrimination across multiple businesses under the same management. And to those who think this is just another media story, you are wrong. This is a reckoning." One reporter raised a hand. "Mrs. Brooks, are you calling for a boycott?" Naomi paused, then said, "No, I am calling for awareness. I do not need people to stop eating at those places. I need them to stop accepting injustice as normal." Her words struck through the cameras like a pulse. The room buzzed with whispers. Another reporter asked, "Do you believe this will change anything?" Naomi gave a small, knowing smile. "Change does not begin when people agree. It begins when they are uncomfortable. After the conference ended, the clip was everywhere within minutes. Hashtags turned to headlines, and what began as a diner altercation had become a national conversation about everyday bias. Back in her office, Naomi removed her blazer and sat in silence for a moment. Vincent entered quietly, setting a cup of tea beside her. "You made the news cycle explode," he said. Naomi looked up at him. "Then it is working." He nodded. "Rick's lawyers are already calling for negotiation." Naomi's voice was calm. "Let them wait. We are not negotiating justice. We are defining it." Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall against the glass windows, each one sharp, rhythmic, and certain, just like her next move. By the following afternoon, the story had reached every major network. News vans lined the street outside Brooks Holdings, their antennas stretching toward the clouds like iron weeds. Inside the building, Naomi stood before a long wall of monitors, each one showing a different headline. "Corporate Queen Challenges Racism in Small-Town Diner." "Wife of Business Mogul Sparks National Debate. Justice or Publicity Stunt?" Naomi stared at the screens in silence, then said to Maya, "Turn them off, all of them." The room went dark except for the soft light from the city outside. Vincent walked in, his jacket draped over his arm, phone in hand. "The governor's office called," he said. "They want a meeting. They are concerned this is going to set off protests." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Protests? People should be more concerned that this keeps happening at all." Vincent exhaled slowly. "You know how politics works. They do not fear injustice. They fear noise." Naomi walked to the window and looked down at the small crowd beginning to form on the sidewalk below. People were holding signs that read "Equality Now" and "Justice for All." She smiled faintly. "Let them make noise. It is about time someone heard it." Carla Evans entered the room carrying a stack of folders. "Ma'am, we have completed our initial investigation," she said. "There are 16 formal complaints tied to that diner chain. 10 of them were never reported beyond management level. They silenced their employees with threats of termination." Naomi turned sharply. "Do we have proof?" Carla nodded. "Every email, every message. We have it all." Naomi looked at Vincent. "Then it is not a story anymore. It is evidence." Vincent nodded, but his tone was measured. "You are going to shake a system that has protected itself for decades. Be ready for the blowback." Naomi smiled, calm and unflinching. "I have been the blowback my whole life." She turned to Maya. "Prepare a formal filing with the Equal Opportunity Commission. Include every piece of verified evidence." Maya hesitated. "Ma'am, that will take this from a media storm to a federal case." Naomi replied. "Exactly. It is time this left the court of opinion and entered the court of law." Carla added, "Once it goes public, they will come after you personally. The franchise lawyers, the unions, the lobbyists. They will dig into everything you have ever done." Naomi looked directly at her. "Let them dig. They will find nothing but the truth, and the truth does not rot when it is exposed." Vincent leaned against the table, studying her. "You really are not afraid of what comes next, are you?" Naomi met his eyes and said, "Fear is a luxury for people who can afford to stay silent. I do not have that luxury." For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of air conditioning. Then Carla said quietly, "We will file within the hour." Naomi nodded and turned toward the door. "Good, while you do that, I will go where it started." Vincent frowned. "You mean the diner?" Naomi's tone was steady. "Yes, I want to look them in the eye one more time." He hesitated, then said, "You will not go alone." Hours later, Naomi's black SUV pulled into the same cracked parking lot off Route 17. The diner looked smaller than she remembered, its neon sign flickering in the late afternoon light. The air smelled of grease and rain. Reporters had gathered across the street, whispering as she stepped out. Inside, the same waitress who had stood frozen that day, Kayla was sitting in a booth, her apron gone, her face pale. Rick was nowhere in sight. When Naomi entered, the chatter stopped instantly. She walked to the counter, rested her hand on it, and said quietly, "Do you know why I am here?" Kayla shook her head, eyes glassy. Naomi continued, "Because when I left this place, I realized something. You did not just insult me. You insulted every person who has ever walked into a room and been treated as less than human." Kayla whispered. "I did not mean," Naomi interrupted softly. "Meaning is not the measure. Impact is." The girl's eyes filled with tears. Naomi's voice softened, not with forgiveness, but with truth. "I do not need your apology. I need your growth." She turned and walked out, leaving the door swinging behind her as the cameras clicked like thunder outside. Vincent stood waiting by the SUV. "Did you get what you needed?" he asked. Naomi looked back at the diner, its sign buzzing weakly in the rain. "No," she said quietly, "but I got what they needed. A mirror." She stepped into the car and the door shut with the quiet finality of a verdict. The storm that had been building for days finally broke above them, rain pouring like judgment across the empty highway. By the next sunrise, the diner case had transformed into a national investigation. News anchors spoke her name on morning television while her face appeared across digital billboards in downtown Manhattan. Naomi Brooks, the woman who turned humiliation into reform, one headline read. Inside her office, Naomi stood beside a long table where stacks of legal binders covered every inch of glass. Carla entered with her phone in hand. "Ma'am, the Equal Opportunity Commission has officially opened a federal review. They are naming Rick and the entire franchise group as respondents." Naomi nodded slowly. "Good. That means it is real now." Vincent stood by the window watching the traffic below. "It has been real since the moment she raised her hand," he said quietly. Naomi turned to Carla. "What about the staff who came forward?" Carla smiled faintly. "Protected, anonymous, every one of them thanked you." Naomi's voice softened. "They should not thank me. They should thank themselves for speaking." She looked out the window, the early sun glinting off the skyline. "This is not about me being right. It is about making sure the next woman is not slapped, questioned, or silenced just because she exists." A knock came at the door. Maya stepped in, holding a printed statement. "Ma'am, this just came from the franchise owner. They have issued a public apology and announced that Rick and Kayla have been terminated permanently. They also plan to implement diversity training across all branches." Naomi took the paper, read it once, and set it down. "That is a start. But training will not fix character. Accountability will." She walked to the podium in her media room, cameras waiting once again. "When people ask what justice looks like," she began, "they expect noise. But justice does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and those who are guilty hear it the loudest." Her tone stayed even, her words deliberate. "This is not revenge. It is correction. Because silence never changed anything. But action does." When she finished, the cameras stayed still for a beat too long before the room erupted in applause. Vincent met her at the door. "It is over," he said. Naomi shook her head. "No, Vincent. It is beginning." She looked back toward the microphones and the flash of cameras. Now they know what power sounds like when it does not shout. 2 weeks later, the fallout had spread far beyond that small diner. The entire restaurant chain was under federal investigation, several managers had resigned, and the company's stock had dropped overnight. Yet in the middle of the chaos, Naomi Brooks remained composed. She walked into her office early that morning, greeted by quiet nods from her staff. On her desk lay a thick envelope marked "Confidential." It was a letter from one of the diner's former employees, a woman named Teresa who had worked under Rick for 3 years. Naomi opened it carefully and began to read. The letter described years of mistreatment, withheld pay, and insults whispered in back rooms. It ended with one simple line: "Thank you for not walking away when everyone else did." Naomi folded the paper slowly, her eyes glistening but her expression calm. Vincent entered, holding a newspaper with her photo on the front page. "You have become the face of something bigger than you ever intended," he said. Naomi smiled faintly. "Good. It was never about me. It was about a culture that needed to see itself clearly, even if it hated the reflection." Vincent leaned on the edge of her desk. "The Department of Labor just issued a new workplace bias review program inspired by your case. They are calling it the Brooks Standard." Naomi looked up. "The Brooks Standard?" Vincent nodded. "Yes. It sets new requirements for employee conduct and discrimination policies in service industries. You started something permanent." Naomi turned toward the window, the city glowing gold in the morning sun. "Permanent is a big word, Vincent, but maybe it is the right one this time." Carla entered the room with a quiet smile. "Ma'am, the franchise owners want to meet. They are offering to donate to your foundation and partner on reform." Naomi paused for a moment, considering. "Tell them yes," she said finally, "but make sure the donation goes to the employees who were silenced, not to me. I do not need their money. I need their accountability." Carla nodded and left. Vincent crossed his arms, watching her. "You really will not rest, will you?" Naomi's voice was calm but resolute. "Rest is what you do when the work is finished, and we are nowhere near done." She walked to the window, looking out at the city that had once doubted her. This started with a slap, she said softly, but it ends with a standard. Outside, the wind carried the sounds of traffic and movement, the hum of a world slowly learning what justice truly meant. 3 months later, the world looked different. The Brooks standard had become a nationwide model, adopted by hotels, restaurants, and service companies across the country. Naomi's quiet fight had transformed into a movement that no one could ignore. She walked through the newly renovated headquarters of Brooks Holdings, where a large mural now covered one of the lobby walls. It showed a single sentence in bold silver letters: "Respect is not requested, it is required." Employees and guests paused to take pictures of it every day. As Naomi passed by, she overheard a young intern whisper to another, "That line changed everything." She smiled softly and kept walking. Upstairs, she entered the glass conference room where her team was waiting. Carla stood beside a monitor displaying new headlines. "Ma'am, the diner chain has settled with the employees. They issued full compensation and a public statement admitting fault. The commission's investigation confirmed your claims. You have officially closed the case." Naomi nodded, her voice calm. "Then we are not closing it, we are expanding it. Send our audit framework to every partner business we have. I want compliance by the end of the quarter." Carla smiled, already in motion. Vincent entered just as the meeting ended. He watched his wife gather her notes and said quietly, "Do you ever look back, Naomi? Do you ever think about that day?" Naomi paused, her eyes distant for a moment. "I do," she said. "Not for the anger, for the reminder that something as small as a slap can uncover something as large as a system." Vincent stepped closer. "And now you have rewritten that system." Naomi turned to face him fully. "No, Vincent, we rewrote it together with everyone who refused to stay silent." Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, distant but steady, like a drumbeat for change. Naomi walked to the window and watched the rain beginning to fall again, washing the streets below. "You know what justice really is?" she asked softly. Vincent shook his head. She smiled faintly. "It is not punishment. It is progress." He nodded slowly. "And you made it happen." Naomi looked back toward the mural in the lobby below. "No," she said, her voice firm and warm at once. "We all did. I just refused to whisper." The rain continued to fall, steady and cleansing as the skyline reflected its light. The world outside was still imperfect, but for the first time it was listening.